Mary Gallagher to make the presentation on 7.1, and then we'll ask the delegations to come forward and provide their input after Mary's presentation. Mary, the floor is yours.
Good morning, Mr. Deputy Mayor, members of Council, and members of the public. Today's report comes with much anticipation and concern. Appreciating the importance of this matter, it was placed first in the queue of presentations today to hopefully address the concerns and questions of Council and our citizens, many of whom are with us today. To provide a bit of history to this issue, as Council is aware, with each new term, the City of Hamilton embarks on a selection process. This process kickstarts the appointment of our Council to the many agencies, boards, and committees, as well as the recruitment of our citizens to the City's advisory and volunteer committees. 14 years ago, in 2001, during amalgamation, a review was undertaken of all the committees across the 6 former municipalities. This review explored efficiencies in the committee structure and explored how the structure could be improved upon in ways that the community could and should interface with City Council. Among the final approved recommendations were 2 which stated that all volunteer committees be reviewed on the need for their existence with a view to be self-sustaining, and noted that without a formal review, they would cease to exist with the end of the Council term. It is important that the number of City committees is manageable, not only from a Council perspective, but from a funding and resource perspective, and that we are not duplicating efforts within our structure. Currently, the City of Hamilton has 104 agencies, boards, commissions, and committees, ABCs for short. Of the agencies, boards, commissions, and committees, 54 are advisory committees, 14 are volunteer committees, and 37 are agencies, boards, and commissions, all requiring staff support, council representation, citizen representation, or a mixture of both. However, regardless of how many committees the City of Hamilton establishes, the citizens of Hamilton continue to want to be engaged, to provide council with their input on matters that most affect them and their communities. Citizen engagement has always been and will continue to be important in the decision-making process. The role of citizens is key to assisting our council and staff in providing advice in the development of policies, programs, and initiatives that ultimately benefit the entire city. The key, however, is to ensure the committee structure is functioning efficiently, in a cost-effective manner, and in accordance with the mandates and procedures approved by this council. Which brings us to where we are today. In January of this year, the review of all the advisory committees, task forces, and volunteer committees was undertaken. An evaluation tool to assist in the review was developed by clerks with the assistance of members of senior management team and staff. In February, the tool was deployed to the staff liaisons who provide resources to our many volunteer and advisory committees, and the evaluation tool was placed on each committee agenda for discussion and completion. By the end of June, the evaluation tools were completed by the volunteer committees and advisory committees and returned to the office of the clerk. A review of the responses ensued. In addition to our internal review, consultation with a number of other municipalities was undertaken. Those included Toronto, Ottawa, Mississauga, London, and Halton. It is a common practice for municipalities to conduct reviews of their committee structures. The reviews revealed that the City of Hamilton has the highest in the number of established citizen committees. The overall review would prove to be very important in addressing a number of issues, such as understanding the roles and responsibilities of citizens, committees, and staff, the effectiveness of the committees, the amount of funding provided, staff time dedicated to committees and staff resources, synergies, and concerns expressed with respect to quorum, membership turnover, and other matters. While it is important that we have advisory committees in place to provide advice to council and staff when requested, it is also important to ensure that our citizens and staff are aware of their role and responsibilities when serving on and providing resources to our committees. The authority of an advisory and volunteer committee is limited. They are established by council to assist in reviewing, investigating, and providing advice to council and staff on policies, programs, and initiatives when directed to do so. In their capacity as advisors, they do not have the authority to direct staff to carry out or undertake activities, or initiatives, spend monies not within the approved budget or mandate, do not have a political role independent of council, so they may not take actions on matters without the approval of the Standing Committee. The authority rests with City Council. The review revealed concerns that Council is not receptive to advice from the advisory committees, that staff do not seem consistently willing to partner with advisory committees by consulting with them in advance of policies or major initiatives impacting citizens prior to reports being considered by standing committees of Council. Advisory committees explore their own initiatives, which ultimately results in additional work for staff and time, and effort is being spent on items that may never rise to committee or Council. Over this 4-year term, 536 advisory, subcommittee, volunteer committee meetings were held. Councillors, citizens, and staff spent over 900 hours in advisory committee meetings. It is a credit to the citizen volunteers and to this council and the community that so many are willing to put in the many hours to be engaged. In addition, staff generated over 500 staff reports and logged over 3,500 hours in providing support to assist in the work of these committees. They too are equally proud of the service they provide. Base budgets for volunteer committees approved over the current 4-year term of Council is just over $400,000. This expenditure includes funding for refreshments and for projects and initiatives. The city's remaining advisory committees have incurred approximately $9,200 in refreshment costs. These amounts, of course, do not reflect or include additional staff time to provide resources to these committees. The role of staff is technical in nature. They are to be available to provide advice to the advisory committees, and when Council directs a matter to be considered by an advisory committee, their role is to present the issue to seek the committee's input. They may also utilize the advisory committees when consultation is required in the development stage of proposals or initiatives they wish to bring forward to Council for consideration. There are many citizen committees whose membership has risen to more than 20 members. Comments received from citizen members noted concerns with quorum, lengthy meetings, membership turnover, difficulties in adequately getting through the business on agendas. The staff report recommends that membership of advisory committees and volunteer committees be set to a maximum of up to 9 citizen members. This would help to address, we feel, the concern of facilitating quorum for meetings, ability for more views to be shared around the table, making it less intimidating for those uncomfortable in larger group settings, and facilitate time to complete the business on the agenda. A review of the number of volunteer committee meetings held noted that for the most part, the volunteer committees meet on average 7 times per year, with some meeting fewer, while others meeting monthly. Staff's recommendation is to move meetings to every 3 months. It is believed that meetings can be less frequent if they are more productive. This will also provide additional time for staff to provide resources to assist our advisory committees while they maintain their current workload in providing services to this council and the community. However, meeting quarterly does not negate the fact that special meetings can be called by the chair in consultation with staff to discuss initiatives which have been referred by this council, or requests by staff to provide consultation or initiatives being considered for council's review. As well as most of our volunteer committees and subcommittees have, smaller working groups are created which can continue to work during the non-meeting months. The review of the various mandates made it clear that there are synergies with some committees as well as similar mandates. In addition, the City of Hamilton has a number of council-approved policies, strategies, and initiatives which impacts the work of our advisory committees. These policies also attribute to the suggested recommendation to merge our various committees. The creation of a new Diversity, Race Relations, and Equity Advisory Committee, which would see the merger of the following volunteer committees: Hamilton Status of Women, the Advisory Committee for Immigrants and Refugees, the Committee Against Racism, the Hamilton Aboriginal Advisory Committee, and the Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual, Transgender, and Queer Advisory Committee. The city's equity and inclusion policy commits the City of Hamilton to providing services, programs, and opportunities for Aboriginal, First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples, creed, groups and individuals, sexual orientation and gender identity, newcomers and new Canadians, socioeconomic equity in persons living in poverty, persons with disabilities, racialized persons, seniors, women, youth. Access and equity initiatives particularly support the values of respect for the needs of all residents, for all viewpoints, and for the diversity of our community, as well as compassion, sensitivity to, and meeting the requirements of all residents with special needs and interests, and those less fortunate. Access and equity initiatives contribute to meeting Council's goal of becoming a great city in which to live, work, and play. The merging of the 5 volunteer committees into the suggested Diversity, Race Relations, and Equity Advisory Committee would provide Council advice on matters relating to diversity, inclusivity, equity, and discrimination, all in keeping with the Council-approved equity and inclusion policy, which supports the principle of inclusion as creating a sense of belonging. The principle of diversity, which validates the sum total of potential found in any group of people, and the positive power and richness that exists when different groups and individuals with a variety of backgrounds, orientations, skills, and experience participate in and contribute to policy making together. Our society in the past, women, minorities, aboriginals, immigrants, refugees, and the gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, and queer communities have endured very different types of discrimination in quite similar ways. Examples in history where kindred spirits came here from all over the world to make a new and better life. Through the need for protection, self-defense, and companionship, they set aside their differences, learned from each other and their cultures. They ended up building a larger, thriving, and more tolerant community that is now the envy of the world, our Canada. Learning together, working together, and being accepting of our differences made us the wonderful society we are today. It is hoped that the merging of these groups overseeing matters referred to them by Council would form new synergies, add unique qualities to the discussion around the table, and lead to a greater collective understanding of the issues. The creation of a new Food Strategy Advisory Committee would see the merging of the current Food and Shelter Advisory Committee and the Community Food Security Stakeholder Committee. The Food Strategy Initiative was approved by Council for the development of a food continuum policy and strategic action plan that will move Hamilton towards being a place where all community residents obtain a safe, culturally acceptable, nutritionally adequate diet. A comprehensive food strategy which will explore linkages between and among committees to strengthen and build support for food-related actions. We have a number of committees and groups which help address the issue of food and food security, and you can see them there on the screen. The Food and Shelter Advisory Committee, the Community Food Stakeholders Committee, the Interdepartmental Food Strategy Steering Team, the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee, and the Emergency Food and Strategic Planning Committee, which is a community group. The current mandate of the Food and Shelter Committee is to provide recommendations regarding social and health issues and policies for citizens with barriers to food and security. The current mandate of the Community Food Security Stakeholders Committee is to advise on community food security issues and related policy development, to recommend strategic actions and specific policy bylaw changes to support the initiatives, to provide technical support for innovation and community development. The Interdepartmental Food Strategy Steering Team is a staff team. Their responsibilities are to develop the Hamilton Food Strategy and to provide direction for allocation of resources and action for food production, processing and distribution, buying and selling, consumption, and food waste. The Emergency Food Strategic Planning Committee, the community group, is a coordinated effort of all of the emergency food providers in our municipality. The Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee provides advice on all agricultural affairs, represents interests of Hamilton's agricultural industry, farm families, reviews and provides input on studies, plans, bylaws, and proposed projects that impact agriculture. As you can see, there are many committees all working towards the same goals and objectives. The recommended merging of the Food and Shelter Advisory Committee and the Community Food Security Stakeholder Committee would see the synergies with respect to food and security issues dealt with by these groups, and they would be dealt with by the Food and Strategy Advisory Committee, while the shelter component of the Food and Shelter Committee would be included with the new Housing Advisory Committee to be discussed shortly. The Food Strategy Advisory Committee would include a representative from the Emergency Food Strategic Planning Committee, whose membership includes many, if not all, members and agencies who deal with issues relating to emergency food. I'm not sure if Joanne wants to add anything further to this, Mr. Deputy Mayor. If not, I'll continue. The Housing and Homelessness Action Plan, approved by Council in December 2013, is a 10-year person-centered plan, a plan of action to achieve targets for housing supply, affordability, support mechanisms, quality, and equity for all Hamiltonians, working towards identifying outcomes, strategies, and actions through partnerships and community involvement. The recommendation today is to give consideration to the merging of the work of the Tenant Advisory Committee and the shelter issues discussed by the Food and Shelter Advisory Committee into the work of a newly created Housing Advisory Committee. The mandate of this committee would be to provide advice and recommendations to City Council regarding the need for affordable housing in Hamilton and approaches and solutions to address affordable housing and homelessness issues that would improve the overall well-being of citizens in Hamilton. The Council-approved Clean and Green Hamilton strategy aims to support and promote and help coordinate initiatives in the community to ensure we're all moving in the same direction and helping each other with the experience, knowledge, and resources needed to keep our city clean and green, including support for programs and initiatives to help beautify our city and keep it safe. The current mandate of the Cleanliness and Security in the Downtown Core Task Force is to identify issues related to the perception of the cleanliness and security of the Downtown Core and recommend appropriate action and strategies to rectify the perception. The current mandate of the Keep Hamilton Clean and Green Committee is to engage citizens to take greater responsibility for improving our community environments by affecting behaviors and attitudes conducive to a clean, healthy, and safe community through leadership and action. The Council-approved Clean and Green Hamilton strategy focuses on behaviors of what each of us can do individually and collectively to keep our neighborhoods clean and green and safe, taking greater responsibility for improving our community environments. With the mandates being similar, the suggestion for merging these two committees into one is being recommended. Other recommendations for committee's consideration today include the 2 consecutive term limit for citizens. This matter has been brought to our attention previously during the selection process from citizens directly concerned that the same individuals are being reappointed to the various advisory and volunteer committees term after term. While it is important for some continuity, having a 2-term consecutive limit may allow for other citizens to become involved in the committee process. With respect to appointing councillor liaisons to each volunteer committee, a further review of the comments received requested a closer working relationship with members of council. Some felt there was a disconnect between the citizen committees and council. For those citizen committees who did have council members attending meetings, they appreciated their input and felt they were being listened to. A direct connection between advisory committees and elected officials needs to be reestablished. The elected officials can provide the immediate and direct connection to council's priorities and challenges. As well, they can provide input into the role that the advisory committees play with respect to specific initiatives. Due to the high number of committees, the role of council in attending regularly for all meetings can be very challenging. The recommended quarterly meetings and merging of volunteer committees may assist council in attending the meetings and providing the much sought after advice and counsel that our citizens are requesting. The council appointments, however, would not be included in the quorum count. When councillors are unable to attend meetings, the volunteer committees can still connect with the appointed member of council who can provide counsel and guidance on an as-required basis. With respect to disbanding of advisory committees who do not meet a minimum of 3 times during the council term, this recommendation speaks for itself. If a committee doesn't have a need to meet at least 3 times in 4 years, likely the original intent of its creation may have changed and the committee may no longer be required. In this instance, the committee should be disbanded. That having been said, the council always has the option of reestablishing a disbanded committee if the business case can be made. With respect to submitting in November of each calendar year, terms of reference and any amendments for the Standing Committee's approval, and the submission of annual progress reports. Attached in the report are the mandates for the volunteer committees only. These are not terms of reference. The mandates are just to provide you with a snapshot of what the role of each committee would entail. Each volunteer committee commences with their first meeting in the new year, and they would either work with an already approved terms of reference or create new terms of reference for consideration. Either way, the terms will be reviewed on an ongoing basis each year to keep the objectives of the group fresh in everyone's mind. In November of each calendar year, the terms will be submitted with any suggested amendments to the Standing Committee for approval. As well, it is being recommended that in November of each calendar year, citizen committees submit a progress report summarizing their activities. This not only will provide the advisory committee the opportunity to showcase their initiatives and work during the year, but would also allow members of the Standing Committee an opportunity to keep informed of the issues being discussed at the citizen level, as well as providing the opportunity to ask questions and make comments on the progress report. What is not noted as a formal recommendation but included in the report is facilitated workshops for our citizens to further explain to them their role and responsibilities, as well as workshops for city staff to further address their roles and responsibilities as they provide resources to our citizen committees. With respect to the recommendation for the suggested establishment of subcommittees, I refer you to Appendix A, which contains the list of the volunteer committees, and Appendix B for the listing of the subcommittees. And with respect to the recommendation for suggested committees to be disbanded or retired, I refer you to Appendix C, Mr. Deputy Mayor, and those are on the screen. To wrap up today's presentation, as you can see from the citizen attendance in today's City Council chamber, we are an engaged city. As council and staff, it is important that we explore other options for engaging our citizens. Sometimes establishing a committee or task force may not be the answer. Hosting community forums, town hall meetings, satisfaction surveys, utilizing our social media, as well as the already established community organizations is an excellent way to gauge public input. We need to ensure that those options are explored before a recommendation to put an established committee or task force to council. In closing, Mr. Deputy Mayor and members of council, today's... In closing, Mr. Deputy Mayor and members of council, today's recommendations did not come easy for staff to present. The easier route would have been to simply bring forward a report which reestablished all of our committees, but that would not have served this council, our citizens, and staff well. We need a committee structure which will address the duplication that currently exists, a structure that will assist our council to advance our policies and strategies and initiatives to better our communities moving forward into the future. Whatever council decides, we and clerks and staff across the corporation stand willing, ready, and enthusiastic to do our best to help our advisory committees make our community better. That's it, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mary. Very in-depth presentation and report. And I have a speakers list. Questions for Mary, Councillors Marula and Farr. Councillor Marula.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With respect to, I guess, the significance and the changing of the fabric of how we operate in this capacity, and taking that into account through Mr. Deputy Mayor, Mary, wouldn't it be advantageous perhaps to defer this to the next term, allow us or the council at that time to consult with the public? So in essence, we should be creating a committee to determine what committees should exist in this city. I think it just moves way too quickly without the consultative process. So through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, to Mary, would you not say that would be sage advice?
Mary, options for council?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. As we have said as staff, at the end of the day, it is your decision to make, and we will respect whatever decision you make. What you do need to be advised is that the selection process will be starting in November for the new term of council. We have a council slate that needs to be prepared for the incoming term, and we need the time and the resources to begin our process to appoint our members of the public to our various committees. So we can do that, absolutely. It would just mean that instead of getting everyone in place by January, February, you are likely talking July, August.
Okay, and I think considering the dramatic changes, I think it would be probably the most advantageous route to take. So through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, to Mary, I think I will be bringing forward that motion accordingly and at the appropriate time, Mr. Deputy Mayor. But I don't want to create anxiety in the community, and I know that we have a number of delegations. I'm not sure if they're more than willing to come down, but I don't think it's the appropriate time to be a delegate today or a delegation today, only because we won't be making that decision. So we'll allow the public to determine whether or not they want to present today. But I think those that are in attendance here will be part of the full, thorough, robust discussion come next term. So at the appropriate time, I will be bringing forward that motion. If you can come back to me for that accordingly.
Thank you for that. I have Councillor Farr next on the list.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. First and foremost, a terrific presentation, a huge undertaking on your part. All around this table, we can agree that Mary Gallagher is one of our finest in the corporation and always very helpful, and certainly it was a difficult task for you here. Just a few questions, and I am definitely in line with the previous speaker. As you know, I've been getting a little bit of feedback of late, and we certainly have proof with delegation after delegation today on this issue. And I'm sure part of your work, Mary, you probably anticipated that that would occur. On the report, page 7 of 35, we have 68 City of Hamilton advisory committees to Toronto's 45 to Ottawa's 5. Can we now assume that it is not 68 but 60, still a heady number, a big number, because on your, also in the report, you're disbanding 8, and I would probably agree with all of those 8 being disbanded. So it's actually 60 to Toronto's 45 to Ottawa's 5 through you?
Correct. Okay.
So we have now 60 advisory committees, which is a little bit better than looking at 68. And had you, I wouldn't mind, first of all, hearing your thoughts on the tabling proposition through the chair.
Through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, as I mentioned, I mean, we do have a selection process that we have to move forward with. If it's the will of this council to have the volunteer committees remain status quo, that will be the only portion that will be delayed. The rest of the selection process will move ahead on schedule.
Okay, so there may be an opportunity to look at some of your suggestions today and approve some of your suggestions today, which is why I asked, because I'm looking at your offering that there are synergies with the clean and green and the downtown cleanliness, and I've been trying to reach out to some of the members as I chaired the downtown cleanliness, and I haven't been able to really get some clarity yet on what their positions are. Some did go through the evaluation tools, some did not. The one thing I can say as chair through you, and you know as a fellow member, Deputy Mayor, we have really, if you're saying there's synergies, we've only once in 4 years had a visit from Clean and Green. And while you may see that there are synergies, there probably are just that alone is an example of if there are, then why wouldn't we have worked together? So those kinds of questions I think we could probably get into more in-depthly between now and my final question, Mr. Deputy Mayor. You're saying November. We now say it's 60 advisory committees that the new council will have to throw darts on a board and try to be part of, and sometimes we barter with one another to be part of an advisory committee that has more relevance in that particular ward. Do you see an opportunity, given what you've recommended here before us, to reduce that number by 60 through you, Chair, to if you were to begin now, and if you're available to begin now, on maybe tackling some of the ones that do make more sense than the others where we're clearly seeing we need a greater consultation.
Absolutely. Through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, whatever direction you provide us today, staff will move quickly forward with. So we are ready to move ahead. We just need to know how you want us to progress.
It would benefit you then if people like me, a chair of one of these advisory committees or others, helped with that dialogue, met with both, for example, and I use it only as an example, Clean and Green committee members, Downtown Cleanliness and Security Task Force committee members. If everyone says, you know, this might work, this could work, I'm guessing in a lot of cases, if we move forward as you have planned, Subcommittees will be a big part of the makeup, and they will do a bulk of the work. But we could work with you too, where applicable, I guess, as chairs and advisory members.
Absolutely, and Mr. Deputy Mayor, clerks would be pleased to facilitate that process for any of our members of council.
Thank you, Mary. One final question. After 4 years, I'm near done my first term. Let's just put it that way. I want to be careful not to sound like I'm campaigning. So how did we get to this point? What's your assessment there? I didn't see that in the report. Is it committee meeting after committee meeting where we just said, you know what, here's how we can solve that problem. Let's start a committee. Is that pretty much how it?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we totally respect that there are difficult issues that this council has to deal with. And sometimes to gauge that public input, as I mentioned in the presentation, our first inclination is to establish a committee. And seniors and management team will tell you that sometimes that's their initial response as well. So we are establishing these committees. We have a procedural bylaw that dictates how these committees should be established, and most of the time we're not following our own procedural bylaw, where the terms of reference need to come back. The discussion needs to be facilitated first to understand what the roles and responsibility of this committee is going to be before you actually approve it. And that's how we will find out through consultation if there are synergies, if there are other groups out there that could be doing the work without us having to establish a committee. There's also the differences between advisory committees and task forces. Task forces are for, as the name says, a specific task. And there's a time frame associated with those. They're not to go on forever. And we interchangeably have names as advisory committees or volunteer committees or task forces, some with citizens, some just with members of council, some with members of council and citizens. So at the end of the day, as long as we have that consultation process, both on a staff level and here at the committee table, then we shouldn't have to go through this process too often.
Mr. Deputy Mayor, understanding and appreciating all of the good work that Mary has done on this file and many others over her great career, I will do what I can with the advisory committee's makeup where I'm involved between now and hopefully the next few weeks. I've already started to reach out to some. And try to assist where I can, and I'm hopeful my colleagues will do the same where they can. And I thank Mary and will support Councillor Marula's motion. We'll second Councillor's motion for now to table the issue to allow for some greater consultation. So thank you.
Okay, thanks, Councillor. And I have, again, this is for questions of Mary. I have a small speakers list, and Councillors Jackson, Clark, McCaddy, Powers, and Whitehead. Councillor Jackson, you're next.
Speaking of consultation, thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. So, Mary, first of all, Deputy Clerk, a very thorough report, exhausted 35-page report. Well done, Mary. And I appreciate where the Deputy Clerk, on behalf of staff resources, while keeping in mind inclusiveness, I think I understand where Mary's coming from. Deputy Clerk, Mr. Deputy Mayor, through you to the Deputy Clerk. Slide 5, Mary, please, just quickly, if you could go back. And this is resources and funding. So, folks, that third bullet point, $9,200 in a $1.2 billion budget for refreshments, a coffee, a sandwich for our volunteers. Mary, I appreciate you've put that up there because it's accurate, but for me, Mary, I mean, that's such a mere pittance of what we do to say thank you. But I guess you just wanted to make sure that every dollar is taxpayer dollar, Mr. Deputy Mayor, through you to Mary? Absolutely, Mr. Chair. And similarly in bullet point 4, again, for projects in a $1.2 billion city budget, so many of those projects have come to fruition and benefited our city. And the over 500 reports as well, Mr. Deputy Mayor, many of them were action items, again, that benefited our citizens. Mary, slide 9, please. I said to the media yesterday when they interviewed me, Mary, first of all, I'm supportive of Councillor Marula's direction as well to refer this to the new term of council. I said to the media, Mr. Deputy Mayor, if these 5 current advisory committees saw strength in numbers in merging and like-minded mandates with that kind of feedback, I might be open-minded to that. Mr. Deputy Mayor, through you to Mary, have you had that kind of initial feedback at all, Mary, with some of these, like this proposed merger here?
Only the feedback that we received in the last couple of days, where there are concerns with merging these groups together. So if Councillor Marula's motion is successful today, those are the types of concerns and issues that we will raise with these groups.
Fair enough, Mary. Number 12, please, slide 12. Unfortunately, I'll have to take a contrary position to the previous speaker. Councillor Collins and I serve on Keep Hamilton Clean and Green. Ironically, had a meeting last night, and they have serious concerns about merging. They see the downtown more of a security measure for downtown and geographically specific for downtown versus their citywide mandate. So they already took a position last night with serious concerns about any possible merger. And 13, Mary, slide 13. Your first bullet point, Mr. Deputy Mayor, how could a guy like me ever be for term limits, Mr. Deputy Mayor? So anyways, no, to our, Mr. Deputy Mayor, Mary, to our citizens that want to serve and serve for as long as they feel productive, I would absolutely be against that first bullet point as well. So just some questions and comments I got on the table. Thanks, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Thank you, Mary.
Thanks, Councillor. Councillor Clark.
Thank you very much. So just questions. Chair. Appendix C. So they're looking through those items. For me, the majority of them seem they've become almost redundant, except for ESAG, which really doesn't have a direct reporting to council or even to the planning committee. They report to Mr. Thorne and the staff, and the staff takes that advice and incorporates in our planning documents. So is there any challenge if this is being deferred, that at least we can start making some headway on eliminating some committees that really are not being utilized anymore?
Through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, if I may, perhaps if I run through each one individually. The Joint City School Board Relations Committee, as Council is aware, we actually have 3 committees that deal with school board issues. So we have the big general overview Joint City School Board Relations Committee, which is the group that is on this sheet. And this is a group that entails members of council as representatives, as well as representatives from both school boards. So that was the large group. Initially, that was the first group that was established by this council. As they tried to meet together as a group, they realized that there were issues that one board found contentious and the other board didn't. The synergies weren't there to meet as a group. So they agreed that they would split off and they would have liaison committees instead. And the only time they would come together is if there were like issues that were referred to them by this council, that they would have to meet together as both boards of education and the City of Hamilton. So since we already have the procedural rules to bring these 2 groups together, we decided to just disband the overall larger group and just have the 2 smaller groups meet. The Hamilton Triple Bottom Line Business Criteria Task Force is an interesting one because they have never met since their inception over this 4-year term. And I don't know if Neil is here today. I don't think he is. But I asked Neil Everson, who's the staff liaison to this group. Neil? Oh, I don't have, wait, I have to put my glasses on.
I did
Hi,
too.
Neil. I contacted Neil and said, Neil, can you tell me how this group has been working and, you know, how often they've been meeting? To which Neil goes, what is that group anyway? He says, no, he says, they've never met. And I said, okay, well, if they've never met, chances are, like I said in my presentation, at one time we may have needed them, but now they're no longer required. The City Hall Renovation Steering Committee, Councillor Ferguson's baby. I think we're done. I think we're done. The City of Hamilton Operational Review Subcommittee. Originally, the intent of this group was to deal with the operational reviews across all departments. What ended up happening in the last couple of years is the standing committee started to do their own individual operational reviews. So the suggestion is to do away with the overall general group. The Parkville Implementation Committee, their work has been completed. The Hamilton Farmers Market, we now have a board that Council has approved, so we can disband the subcommittee. And as Councillor Clark mentioned, the ESAG group is really a technical committee that reports to staff.
So then, from what I'm hearing there, there's good rationale to disband them, and there's no reason that we couldn't proceed with that, as well as the deferral motion on the larger part, so that at least we're starting to make some headway in terms of rationalizing the committees. Do we have a number? One of the slides indicated 3,500 staff hours, I think it said. What's that translate into dollars? Do we know?
No, I'm sorry, I don't have that number. Lots.
The Deputy Mayor, Mr. Zagaric, he's doing the math in his head.
With the chair, sorry, let me just some quick. About 185,000.
With regards to the governance side, in terms of if we defer this process to the next council to ultimately have some discussions and develop mergers or whatever the case is, where the community reps are in agreement, how would that work if we're appointing all of the new committee members for 4 years?
Through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, that would be a challenge. We do, regardless of the fact that City Council has agreed to have our last council as September 24th, if we truly want to have this in place for the new term, there is no reason why we can't begin the engagement process now and prior to the end of this term have a special meeting called so that we can address this issue moving forward. The ideal situation is to have, by December, a new committee structure in place where we can appoint not only members of councils to the slate, but to our citizen appointments as well.
The only other option to that would be not to make the appointments, which really becomes problematic in terms of how we're dealing with the first 6 to 9 months of the new term without civic engagement.
Exactly. I mean, we can move forward, and we will with this, with the member council appointment slates, but the citizens will be delayed.
Has the clerks considered how they would reach out to do consultation this year? Put your mind to that in terms of how we would reach out to the residents if we defer it and have some consultation. I see Mr. Murray's waving over.
Chris?
If I can, through you, Deputy Mayor, I was going to suggest, in light of the direction it appears you're going to be moving in, that clerks work with Paul Johnson. This is an engagement group. They're structured over and situated over in Joanne's department. They've been doing a lot of work with the community on how to better engage. So I think the two parties could come up with a very good answer to your question.
Okay. And I need to ask the question because we certainly don't want anyone thinking that any of these committees have been deemed redundant or not useful to the community. What you're really talking about is a governance model so that the committees and the work that they're doing would still continue, but under a different committee structure.
That's correct, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Okay, I'll listen to the rest of the debate. Thank you.
Councillor McCaddy, you're next on my list.
Thanks very much, Mr. Chair, and thanks very much, Mary, for all that work. That's obviously a ton of work that you've done on this, so it's going to be valuable by the sounds of things for the mostly for the next council. Just one quick clarification, and I think I know the answer, but just to make sure, the ESAG group, it's not that it's being disbanded, period.
No.
It's just it's being removed from the list of advisory committees because, as Councillor Clark indicated, it does just provide advice to staff on development applications and the like that affect environmentally significant areas. So it's still in place, correct, but it's just not our committee.
Yes, that's correct.
That's good. So I think that list Appendix C, Mr. Chair, probably has some legs in terms of Council Marula's consideration for his motion removing those. I guess the one I just speak as a council representative on the Committee Against Racism and in touch with some of the other committees, and I think that's probably the most problematic list that we have to have more discussion on. The one Part B involving Diversity, Race Relations, Equity Committee, and the list of the 5 committees there. My sense is there's quite a bit of difference. Well, there is a significant difference between those different committees. So that'll engender a lot more discussion, and certainly that'll be the one that we need to spend a lot of time on with the groups and with the community generally. The food groups, I think that's worth a discussion as well, but there may be some synergies there. So I'll just leave it at that, Mr. Chair. Looking forward to the motion coming forward. And Mary, thanks very much for the huge scope of work you brought forward. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Powers.
Things like operations of council and committee structure is generally vested with the governance committee, and we thought we would share this with GIC because it impacts not only the whole city but all of us on council. A little historical, when I joined City Council back in 2000, and I was chair of the governance committee at that time, we had 234 committees at that particular time that we had to deal with, and as such, Rose and Mary and I have, well, that's why my hair cut the way it is. We had to go through those trials and tribulations back then in order to trim, and we came down to the 30, and for whatever the reasons, it's evolved to the 68, and now to go back to 60. But the reality is, and it will be the next council that will have to deal with it, is the clerk's department with the current resources that they have, whether they're dollars or people, cannot continue to physically provide the support that's required. If the decision of council is to continue either merge where it's appropriate or leave ones to where they are, is next year in your budget you're going to have to consider additional resources to the clerk's department in order to source these people. A lot of them, not a number of the groups, don't just meet for the sake of considering their area of expertise. In a lot of places, they'll ask for city resources from even other departments, planning department or public health or that, to come back the report. So that draws in those various departments. So perhaps the direction being suggested by Councillor Marula to send it back to have a more appropriate discussion. But ladies and gentlemen, the new council is going to have to resource whatever decision you made because they can't resource it the way they are right at the present time.
Councillor Whitehead.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. I really appreciate the work by the Clerk's Department on this, and in fact, as a councillor that sits on probably a third of those or even more on the committees, I understand how stretched the resources are, 1 and 2. I understand and appreciate that there's a lot of those committees that, although there's maybe not a councillor sitting on it, the desire is to have a councillor sit on it. We just don't have the ability because of scheduling and conflict to accommodate those requests. So that becomes a challenging thing and let down for some of those committees not to have a councillor there. So I can understand that there needs to be a change and a bit of a purge. The question I have is how many citizens, volunteers, total are sitting on these committees?
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Deputy Mayor, I don't have that exact number.
Because I hear questions being asked about staff hours, 180,000 and so forth. Well, to suggest that if you have 200 volunteers sitting on the committee giving up their time to those committees, there's a value in that as well. And if you want to equate it into a financial component to offset those other arguments, you certainly can do that. But to have citizens give up their time and sit around those tables and commit to those committees, if you had to pay them, it would be a heck of a lot more than $180,000. I can guarantee you that. So I guess we need to value that piece, which doesn't seem to be weighed in this report, the value of the hours and the commitments of those individuals and those volunteers on every committee relative to and the cost benefit versus the costs that are being equated here in this report. I want to see that offset before I better understand where we're going. The second piece is we already have a structure here, and I'm going to ask through the clerk, you know, with our standing committees, we have many committees eventually report to us. So I don't mind the idea, although I understand the merit of going out for consultation. But for example, I think it was the race relations one and the combination of those number of committees, there's no reason why that committee, which would hopefully have a counselor on it, or two, could have subcommittees on each of those individual components that would report to that particular committee so that they, as a standing committee, so to speak, would provide those recommendations and that input from those various organizations, and then that will come up to the appropriate standing committee. So there's efficiency in that. So there's not autonomy lost. I want to make this clear. In that model, which is no different than the model we have now in regards to committees reporting to this committee or to our standing committees, there's no autonomy lost with any of those organizations because they can still exist as subcommittees reporting to this standing committee that could be better resourced and through efficiency bring that information back to the appropriate standing committee. So I certainly see merit in what is being put before
Councillor,
us.
we're on questions right now. I can come back to you for comments at some point in time.
Okay, Mr. Chair, I just heard comments before I spoke, and there was latitude provided for that. I asked if it's questions or comments because there was comments provided before. So why now, when I'm providing comments, it becomes an issue is a little bit puzzling.
Order, please.
So
continue.
I mean, I just want consistency. If that's the case, I don't mind asking just questions. So that piece I understand. The last piece is this is, you know, Mississauga shut down, Toronto shut down. We're at the latter part. To make a major decision in regards to this process today is a bit challenging for me, and that's why the motion that's being put forward I think is prudent because we do need to consult and educate and understand and hopefully understand from both perspectives what's the best way to move, understanding the challenges that have been put in this report. So I certainly appreciate the report before us. Thank you.
I need a motion to move to receive Mary's presentation this morning. It's moved by Pearson. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
One question to you, to Mary. Mary, I'm with Councillor McCaddy in this. You put a lot of work in it, and it made a real interesting read. So I guess my question to you is that what I'm hearing when I met with people out in the hallway was, you know, we just saw this on Friday. I mean, this is the same argument we get when in planning, because the staff reports go public on Friday, and the meeting's early next week. Is there any downside just to moving this forward? And I think Chris Murray's suggesting that Paul Martin and or yourself get feedback from the various committees out there and get their reaction in writing before we have to make a final decision. Does that make sense to you through Mr. Chairman?
Chris?
Paul Martin. I'd like to have some of your money there, Paul Martin.
There's a lot going on right now.
So through you, Deputy Mayor. I do think that makes some sense here in light of kind of what I'm hearing around this table. So I think there's validity in that suggestion.
Okay, that's my question.
Okay.
Anything to add on that, Mary?
No, we're ready, willing, and able to assist.
Yeah, good answer.
Councillor Pasuta.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Collins. And real quick, I was just flipping the pages here. Back to merger number 2, New Food Strategy Advisory Committee. Printing somewhat, put my glasses on here, but I know you're talking about merging the Food and Shelter Advisory Committee and the Community Food Security Stakeholders. When I go over to the bottom right, Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee, which is the subcommittee here of the Planning Committee, although a lot of items go from GIC and Board of Health also go to that group. That group will be a standalone still. Is that my understanding through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor?
Yes, that's correct, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Okay, because a lot of...
Sorry,
I'm
Councillor. We will ask for a representative from that committee to serve on the newly established committee.
Okay, thank you. It's very important.
There's a link.
Very important, that committee, because it directly deals with impacts to agriculture, rural areas, and a lot of input. Plus, the members on that also are members of the Hamilton Winter Federation of Agriculture and the Christian Farmers. A lot of good input. So thank you for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pearson.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, and I also want to thank Mary for all the work in this report. It was a tremendous amount of research and involvement, and I think we do have to remember also it's not just the process here. If we all recall, and I hate to say it, I was not interested in being on the selection committee at the beginning of the term. That's a monumental task for the number of volunteer and agency committees as far as in interviews. I think if I remember, Councillor Johnson was the chair of it. There's about 240 interviews that were held across a number of months. It was very difficult to get quorum, and being sure that the same people interviewed everybody that applied for the positions in that one committee. So that was also a major issue going forward, and a lot of these committees didn't start up until end of April, beginning of May. So the more we exasperate this and not do this review, it's not going to make anything better. I'm looking forward to hearing the motion coming forward, but I hope that in the motion we can also move at this time the Appendix C, removing the 8 committees currently that we no longer have in place. Mr. Chairman, thank you, and thank you again, Mary.
Yeah, and I was going to go back to Councillor Clark on that one at the appropriate time. Councillor Clark, did you want to speak to this issue again?
No, just another quick question then. So listening to some of the comments and hearing very clearly the discussion about the governance model where subcommittees would be a part of these particular committees. So is it possible to give the direction that our staff, Mr. Murray and Johnson, meet with the different committees to actually discuss how that would work? Because I think a part of it is the fear that they're just being disbanded, and that's not the case. It really is about trying to find efficiencies within the committee structure in order to keep the work moving. So if I could just get comments from Mr. Murray on that would be helpful.
Chris.
To you, Deputy Mayor. I think certainly on the face that makes a lot of sense. The intent here is not to disrespect the individuals that have committed so much of their time to this community, and so without having the opportunity to sit down with Paul and kind of think through the logistics of all this, I can certainly say that I think what you're saying makes sense, and I'd be surprised that we wouldn't do that.
Now, is it possible, Mr. Chairman, to actually have those discussions before we begin the process of selections for the committee, so that this council still has the opportunity, whether it's a special meeting or not, to say, yes, we've got some buy-in from people? Putting it off to next year really means status quo for 4 years.
Through you, Mr. Deputy Chair, I think we're going to have some further discussion with Paul on this. As you know, he's leading the work on citizen engagement, through which we're talking about establishing actually the mechanisms through which we can do proper engagement and proper consultation. I think that's an important piece of work that we'd want to get done. We're scheduled to have that done, I think, Paul, by the end of the year. And because I think whatever we do here should be within the context of that charter in terms of how we should appropriately engage and work with people. So we may need to have some forgiveness in terms of the process for the first year of council in order that we ensure that we get this right. I think we should also consider, as part of that review, the appropriate alignment of these advisory committees to which department and how we're going to staff them up. So I think there's a bit of work that we've got to do and come back probably within the first quarter of the next term of council with some recommendations. Might recommend status quo for the first 6 months, appoint new councillors to the committees, but keep the membership status quo until we do an appropriate and thorough review and more consultation.
So would that mean an extension of the appointments from this term for 6 months into the next term, which I think would be feasible?
We've done over the years that same concept when a committee's been under review.
Okay. I look forward to Councillor Marula, if he could just include that, just to at least try to get some efficiencies in this process as opposed to simply putting it off. So, and I think that's where he's headed, but we'll have to wait and hear the motion. Thank you very much.
Thanks for that. Rose, did you want to say something a couple minutes ago?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. I just wanted to say I'm pleased to hear that you recognize the hard work that was conducted by Mary. She has a wealth of experience in this area, and she is well respected by staff and the citizens. So I'm pleased that has shone through in this presentation. We know that Council has that challenge to establish volunteer committees that provide assistance to you and to the city's administration while making the best use of the city resources and the expertise provided by these volunteers. We want to continue to have citizens work with you, and we're just trying to find as you know, a model that works best for everybody. We thought these suggestions were worth having the conversation, so we're pleased that, we can continue in it. Just to address what Councillor Clark had indicated, if you would like, one option would be that, the mergers would affect 11 of the volunteer committees. When we do our appointments, we appoint citizens for the term of council or until their successors are appointed. So we could, in fact, continue a status quo for these 11 committees until we have this review done in one that you feel comfortable, that would provide the appropriate amount of consultation, and then come back to you at that time for the selection of these specific 11 committees.
Okay, I'm going to go back to committee for a motion to receive Mary's presentation. Moved by Ferguson, seconded by Pearson. All those in favor? Procedurally, really? Go ahead.
I'm just, I am through Deputy Mayor, if I can. I think all of you know, and I think it's important here that our colleague Mary, and I know I don't want to embarrass you, Mary, but all of us that have worked with her know not just what a professional, but what an absolute positive influence she has. And we know that this is probably her last GIC. And so I just think, well, I just think I need to, and I'm not trying to embarrass her, but I need to say something in this public forum and thank Mary very specifically for many years.
For that? Yes. Very well said. And I understand we have some direction that the committee wants to give. I'm going to go back to Councillor Marula. I think Councillor Clark, you wanted to move ahead, I think, still with the removing the...
Okay, Mr. Chairman, perhaps you should listen to the motion first.
Well, hang on. We have delegations first, so I'm going to come back to you for the motion. I'm not going to the committee before I go to the delegations.
Mr. Chairman, I did offer at the beginning, if the delegations, after hearing the motion, wanted to still continue.
I'm going to ask them right now, and then I'm going to come to you
after hearing the motion.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you for your patience. I appreciate that. So first on our list for delegations this morning, I have Marlon Pickin from the LGBTQ Citizen Advisory Committee. Marlon, you're here with us. You've heard the discussion. Still need the opportunity to speak to us in light of the referral to next term?
Only to suggest that I would be in support of this being referred back to staff with clear direction around meaningful consultation with all equality committees that the city currently has in place. And I appreciate the idea of a 6-month extension to the current term of citizens on these committees to give that appropriate time, the experience that we've acquired over the last 4 years, and to be able to provide meaningful consultations. So thank you.
Marlon. So motion then to receive Marlon's presentation, moved by Ferguson, seconded by Whitehead. All those in favor? Carries. Thank you. Next I have Yvonne Miracle. Is Yvonne here this morning? You want to read it right now? Go ahead, Councillor.
Just so everyone realizes what the motion actually that was written half an hour ago reads, that City Council support the disbanding of subcommittees as outlined in Appendix C, and B, that the remainder of the report be deferred to the 2014-2018 term of council, and C, that the City Clerk's Office work with Paul Johnson and his citizen engagement team on this initiative, and D, that an extension be granted to the existing complement of the Hamilton Advisory Subcommittee until the completion of the consultative process is completed.
Right. So I will come back to you at the appropriate time after the delegations. Yvonne, good morning.
Good morning.
You've heard the direction here today.
I've heard the direction, but I still want to proceed with
Absolutely.
The material that I have prepared, and I want to still present.
Please go ahead.
Because time can go on and things can get lost.
Floor is yours.
I'd like to thank the chair and members for allowing me this opportunity to come forward. I represent actually the Aboriginal Advisory Committee, and so greetings. I'm here today to speak to the potential disbandment, but which is going to be changing. We're going to have that 6-month extension, which I am grateful for. So for the for the Aboriginal Advisory Committee. Members of the committees were just made aware of this, and again, that was brought forward. So I thank you very much for acknowledging the short notice, because we too were very surprised at the short notice regarding this. So again, we thank you for recognizing that. So I just want to speak to when the committee was originally struck 4 years ago, it took almost 1 full year. So when you're talking about the extension, just to let you know, for the Aboriginal Committee, I heard some mention of there was a late delay and some started maybe in April, May. Well, we actually didn't start till November. So as for the Aboriginal Committee, that's why I'm taking this moment to speak right now, because we could be forgotten or delayed even further. So I am going to speak to this. So we took our role very seriously in the reviewing and making recommended changes to our terms of reference and the mission statement of the Aboriginal Advisory Committee. The first group tried to, at first the group tried to work on the material, and we made changes ourselves. But we felt that we required a more dedicated and professional staff member, so a consultant was actually hired and brought in to help fine-tune the terms of reference and the mission statement. The group felt that changes accurately represented our Aboriginal group and that the role that it was meant to serve, and also to assist with future development for the City of Hamilton. This process has allowed other issues to be brought forward that was later to be used in the development of our work plan. But before we could move forward, we had to have the terms of reference and mission statement provided, approved, which we waited for several months for that approval to take place. And as we awaited for that approval, we were able to complete the following. And actually, we never did get our terms of reference and mission statements approved by this council. So we have been there for almost 4 years. We were late in starting. We didn't get the approval. We had a consultant come in, work with us, and we did not get the final approval of our terms of reference and mission statement. But we still continue to work. We developed a preliminary list of priorities for the City of Hamilton as it relates to the urban Aboriginal people and the development of public awareness programs to promote the historical contribution of its First Peoples. We developed 2 surveys that were taken to the urban Aboriginal community to fill out and respond to about the relationship and the role of the Aboriginal Advisory Committee and its connection to the City of Hamilton. 2 community information booth sessions were held in the Aboriginal community about the committee and its connection to the City of Hamilton again. Development of a specific protocol for conducting Aboriginal openings at meetings. An eagle feather was actually officially presented to the City of Hamilton with a hand-carved feather box, which is present here with us, along with medicines that is supported here. And this is on display actually on the 2nd floor in the cabinet. So when we actually conduct our meetings, we have a protocol in the way we do things. And for those who may not know, it's a very important matter. Actually, this is actually addressed with the City of Hamilton's logo on it. This is a very important responsibility. And when we did this, if we knew that our fulfillment, or we weren't going to be here after 4 years, we would not have made this happen. Because this is a long-term commitment, and that's why it is so important that we know that there is going to be a continuation for the Aboriginal Advisory Committee. Because a group needs to look after this feather and maintain the medicines and what this is all about. So it really would sadden our committee if there is not that responsibility on the other side. We also developed an Aboriginal glass case for holding items in to exhibit the Aboriginal culture through items placed within to promote Aboriginal History Month and National Aboriginal Day, which is in June and June 21st, respectively. Several of the oldest Aboriginal agencies were formally recognized at the City of Hamilton's finance meeting for their contributions towards making Hamilton a good place to raise a family, and to bring forward recognition to the city about other Aboriginal-related activities, including participation at the Soaring Spirit Aboriginal Festival. The Pan Am Torch Relay that's taking place in 2015 is actually coming out of that festival next year. And some of that was initiated through our advisory committee. We want to bring forward the issue that the committee feels it's important because it supports and recognizes the historical position and contribution that Aboriginals have made towards the development of not only the urban Aboriginal community, but also to the greater community of Hamilton at large. We understand that the subcommittees are costly, but the cost of human participation is vital in the development of engaging the public and builds trust, which leads to a more effective municipal government, creating a better place for citizens to live, work, and play. And you will recognize some of these words. For the Aboriginal people who live in the city, this is such an important statement, and with our committee, demonstrates the city's commitment to it. Our committee has also made an investment. When working out the numbers, our committee, who does not receive any remuneration for the time, has approximately dedicated 924 hours, and at a living wage, $14.95 equals almost $13,114 of in-kind services to work on various Aboriginal and City of Hamilton related issues at this table. Excuse me, my mouth is really drying at this point. We do this to ensure that we can make recommendations for Hamilton to become a positive and inclusive place for Aboriginal people in all Hamiltonians alike. During the time spent on the Aboriginal Advisory Committee, we have realized that things move slow and that the role of the Aboriginal Advisory Committee is limited. As the Aboriginal people continue to move to the cities, thank you very, very much. I lost my place here. To the cities, thank you. As the Aboriginal people continue to move to the cities and are making them their homes, we need to know that we have an opportunity to help shape the city in a positive way for its Aboriginal community members. We understand the diversity and the changes within the community, but as the First Peoples, we have only been able to participate within the last 30 years or so. We want to continue this participation to improve upon communication, dialogue, and inclusivity so that our history and cultural relevance will be included in future planning. Not to take away from others, but as the first people of the land, we only have begun to participate within the city planning and advisory structure. We would appreciate more time and effort to make sure that our voice and opinions are heard. We don't want to be just tokens, but we want to have a real voice that can assist with positive change. We know that we have begun to make changes for the better, but in order to continue this process, we need to have our own place within the system. And as we feel that our issues and our voices can become lost in this new proposed diversification or perceived assimilation process. So that's why it's important that we remain. Therefore, we respectfully request that the City of Hamilton, the General Issues Committee, for the opportunity of the recently formed Aboriginal Advisory Committee to continue to develop and to grow in its current structure, resulting in better citizen engagement and would allow for mutually beneficial opportunities in the future. So in short, we ask that your recommendation not be supported. And again, I thank you for allowing at least the time to go on, the six months evaluation or review, and taking that time, and I do appreciate it. I'm very nervous up here, so excuse my shakiness in my words. And I thank my fellow committee member for coming up here to be with me, to be my support. And I thank you all for listening to me. And I also commend Mary on that report, because that was a heck of a job. But again, I think with some of it, and once you review it and talk to the people the next time, you will see there is a need for those other committees. Thank you.
Thanks, Yvonne. And can you please introduce your committee
Cindy
member?
Sue McCormick.
Cindy, thanks for joining us as well. I do have a question from Councillor McCaddy, so if you can stay at the podium. Excuse me, Councillor McCaddy.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I just thanks for the presentation. And Yvonne, you said you were nervous. I just wanted to say I know you've been working on the giving lots of speeches all throughout the city and working on that, and your speech was fantastic. Your words, of course, very meaningful, and we're taking those to heart today. But your delivery and your speech, because I know you've been working on it, we've talked about that, just fantastic. So know that you've made a huge difference today.
I've also left copies of this so that you can see it in more detail. But again, I appreciate and thank you.
Thank you for your presentation, Yvonne. And I'll motion from Councillor McCaddy then to receive the presentation, seconded by Councillor Farr. All those in favour? Carries. Thank you. Next on the list of presenters, I have Connie Bellamy of the Tenant Advisory Committee. Is Connie still with us this morning? Going once, twice, three times. Denise Doyle. Denise is here.
Good morning, members of council. I'm here as the co-chair of the Status of Women Committee. I'd like to thank council for the motion being put forward today. There was serious concerns about this report on Friday. Although we recognize that a lot of work and effort were put into it, we do not believe that there was enough effective consultation. You know, one of the things I think this council should be proud of, I did a lot of community development work prior to becoming the CEO of the YWCA. And one thing that I learned in community development, and anybody working in that field would know, we shouldn't be afraid of having citizens being engaged. And in fact, having larger numbers in citizen engagement, I think, speaks to a more well-rounded opportunities for City Council. With regards to the Status of Women Committee, some of you may not know, but the City of Hamilton has one of the oldest Status of Women Committees in all of Canada. And that's something that we need to be proud of. And furthermore, it's 2014, and we still have a lot of work to do as it relates to the status of women in not only our own community and in our country. Lastly, I look forward to an opportunity to work with the city and Paul Johnson in terms of how we can be better at engaging our citizens and in the individual committees. And just something to think about, folks, we talk a lot about governance models. Well, I can tell you that sometimes the governance models that exist exclude a lot of people. And so we need to be thinking about, when we're engaging our citizens, how can we do that more effectively? And the Status of Women Committee presented a report to this council around using an inclusion lens when we do our work. And I really hope that the City of Hamilton starts to seriously consider what we need to do if we're going to do our work better, and our citizens can become more engaged. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Denise. Questions for Denise at this point in time? Committee members, hearing none. I need a motion then to receive the presentation, moved by Whitehead, seconded by Marula. All those in favor? Carries. Thank you. Next on my list is Dina Honig of the Immigration and Refugee Advisory Committee. Dina. Good morning.
Thank you. I'm a little short here, so I hope you see me over this. Thank you very much for inviting us to present here. I'm totally supporting the motion of continuing consultation. We were also caught by surprise by this fast turns of events. I did want to talk about two issues. First, I just wanted to read a little bit of my presentation since we're going to be consultation. Don't need to hear the whole of this. I just wanted you to think about one point or about immigrants in the city. And I want to say that with immigrants and refugee access to migrant program and support services aiming at helping them thrive in Hamilton, they are still in many cases facing hardship and barriers to integration, acculturation and employment. A voice in city halls and expertise on gaps in services cannot be restricted to one-person representation from an immigration agency. The diverse needs and access to councillors' ears can only be represented in a standalone advisory committee. Commitment to this population can not only be heard, it needs to be seen. Having an advisory committee dedicated to their needs sends a clear message both to Hamilton community and to potential newcomers that the City of Hamilton inviting the input and making them a partner with the city in decisions that affect their lives. Okay? And I just wanted to point something that there was not a lot of discussion about, but I want to, I don't know if we can discuss it today, but to take into consideration consultation is that when you look at the composition of up to 9 members, okay, we are really only giving 3 slots to the general population, and the rest of the slots are given to people who are already working in agencies in the various committees. So do we really want to go from 20 representatives of the general population to 3? Is that what we are trying to do? I think there were not enough discussion about this point. I think that was glossed over. I would like that to be a point of discussion, if not here, then in consultation. So thank you for your allowing me to speak today. I have Aspi here also from the committee, and since you are going to consult, so we're not going to need a diatribe about how it all came about, okay? So thank you.
Thank you for your presentation this morning, and I will ask any questions of the Councillor Whitehead.
Any questions?
Motion then to receive the presentation, moved by Whitehead, seconded by Farr. All those in favour, carries. Thank you. Thank you for your patience this morning in sticking around that long.
Thank you very much.
Next, I have Will Rosart. Is Will still here, Mr. Rosart?
Good morning.
Morning, sir.
I come to speak today about the possibility of merging the Hamilton Municipal Heritage Committee with the proposed Historical Advisory Committee. Before I begin, this report only came out Friday, and some committee members only became aware of it yesterday. No public input of the report has taken place. My opinion is that input should happen before this is implemented, which now appears to be happening. Excuse me. The new Historical Advisory Committee is to advise on heritage matters and to promote awareness and appreciation of Hamilton's history. The municipal heritage function Municipal Heritage Committee's function has been to advise staff of all designation of properties under the Ontario Heritage Act, also to educate the public on the issues of heritage conservation. It should be noted that the new Historical Advisory Committee now reports to the Planning Committee, which the Municipal Heritage Committee has reported to in the past. Does that bring the museums under the responsibility of the Planning Department? There have been some problems with lack of quorums of both committees. Some of the committee functions require more than quarterly meetings. Also, you need to allow for replacements once a year at least from committee resignations. Some people were in the committee at the beginning, quit after the first couple meetings, and are not replaced. The Municipal Heritage Committee has 3 council members. I'm not sure this is required by the Act. 1 councillor may not be enough. And I had a couple of small comments that I noticed on other things. In the Planning Committee, Standing Committee, and the subcommittees, they mentioned the Cross Melville District Heritage Committee. There are a number of small committees that report to permit review that are of the heritage districts, and only 1 is identified in the report. And I think that was the only comment. It's good to see that they're referring this back, and we'll get some time to deal with it more, and the committees will have an opportunity even to make a statement further. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Rosart. If you could just stay there in case I have any questions of the committee members. Anything at this point in time? Hearing none, it's moved by Councillor Powers and seconded by Councillor Pasuta to receive Mr. Rosart's presentation. Thank you, sir, again for your patience, for coming in. All in favour? Carries. Thank you. Now I'm going to go back to Councillor Marula. Did you want to read your motion one more time, just to be clear in terms of what we're doing with 7.1?
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. It's moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Farr, if he's in the room. Councillor Morrow. A, that City Council support the disbanding of subcommittees as outlined in Appendix C of the report. And B, that the remainder of the report be deferred to the 2014-2018 term of council. C, that the City Clerk's Office work with the Director, Neighborhood of Community Initiatives with his citizen or her citizen engagement team on this initiative. And D, that an extension be granted to the existing complement of the Hamilton Advisory Subcommittee until the completion of the consultative process as outlined in the establishment of the City of Hamilton's advisory subcommittees.
Thank you for that, Councillor. It's been moved and seconded. I'm just going to ask the clerk, in addition to what Councillor Marula has provided, are there other parts of the recommendation that require procedurally to go forward in light of the direction that's been given?
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. With respect, can we please have item N approved, because that initially are the slates for members of council.
So we'll amend that motion as per the clerk's request. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Carries. Thank you, and thank you for everyone who attended this morning. And